Jack Ryan sat alone in the cockpit of his small starfighter, his fingers brushing over the controls as he waited for the jump coordinates from Mission Control. He felt the usual tension in his chest. Every mission had risk, but this one weighed heavier on his mind. Princess Claire had been taken by space raiders 3 days ago. The news had spread across the galaxy and every military vessel was on high alert. But the raiders had hidden her ship deep in an asteroid field. Only a pilot with skill and courage could navigate those dangers. The engines hummed beneath him. Jack thought of Claire's gentle smile when they had met at the peace conference. She had thanked him for his service then. Now he would risk everything to bring her home. The fleet flagship hovered on the edge of the field, just outside the asteroid belt's pole. His orders were clear. Fly in, find the raider vessel, rescue the princess, and escape before enemy reinforcements arrived. Jack took a deep breath. He engaged the hyperdrive and felt the familiar rumble as stars blurred around him. When he dropped out of hyperspace, the view was both beautiful and deadly. Rocky asteroids of all shapes floated around him, casting strange shadows. The raider ship was cloaked, but its energy signature was faintly visible. Jack aligned his starfighter with the ship's beacon and carefully guided his craft through gaps between asteroids. Suddenly, sensors beeped. Small raider fighters launched from hidden bays on the asteroids. They darted toward Jack's ship like angry hornets. Jack adjusted his course, weaving around a large rock. He shot a few stun pulses at the fighters, causing them to spin out of control. 2 exploded in silent flashes of light against the backdrop of space. His mind stayed calm. Years of training had prepared him for this. He punched the boost and cleared the last cluster of rocks. Ahead, the raider stronghold rested. Like a dark fortress, Jack's target lay inside. He switched to stealth mode and slipped close to the hull. A faint red glow marked the hatch leading inside. Jack leapt from his cockpit in a small shuttle pod, tethered by a thin cable to his starfighter. In the pod's cramped interior, he pulled on a suit and checked his blaster. He thought of Claire, waiting, scared and alone. This image strengthened his resolve. He released the airlock and drifted toward the hatch. A magnetic grapple latched onto the hatch's frame. Jack pulled himself inside the hull. The corridor was dimly lit with cables hanging from the ceiling. He moved slowly, keeping close to the wall to avoid security cameras. At the corridor's end, 2 raider guards talked quietly. Jack waited until one guard walked away, then crept up behind the other. With a swift move, he knocked the guard out with a stun to the back of his neck. The air was stale. Jack followed the map in his head. The prisoner's cells lay deeper in the ship's core. Around every corner, he paused to listen. When he reached the holding area, he saw a cell with a glowing force field. Inside, Princess Claire sat on a metal bench, her head bowed. Her long hair shimmered under the red lights. Jack moved close. Claire looked up, her eyes wide. Hope shone there. He pressed a small device to the cell's control panel. The force field flickered and dropped. He reached in and unlocked the door. "Jack?" Claire asked in a soft voice. Relief warmed her tone. "Claire, we have to move fast," he said. "Raider ships will be here soon." She nodded, standing. Jack offered his hand and she took it. She was lighter than he expected, but she walked with grace. Together they slipped back down the corridor. On the way out, an alarm sounded. Red lights flashed. Between them and the shuttle bay, 2 raider soldiers raised their weapons. Jack covered Claire and fired. His blaster pulse hit one soldier in the chest. The other dropped his gun and raised his hands. "Let us go," Claire said, her voice firm. Jack tied the soldier's hands with a cable. He forced him to open the security door. They ran down a narrow hallway. Jack glanced back to see more guards rushing toward them. He grabbed Claire's arm. "This way," he said, and led her into a maintenance shaft. The metal walls were tight, but they fit. Jack activated his flashlight and walked through the darkness. The sound of boots faded behind them. After a few tense moments, they reached the end of the shaft. Jack found a rusted ladder and climbed up. Above, he saw the shuttle bay, empty except for his pod. He tapped his communicator. Control, this is Ryan. I have the princess. Initiating. Extraction. Static crackled. He pressed the emergency override. The shuttle bay door hummed open. Jack pulled Claire inside the pod and strapped her in. He attached the tether to the warning latch on the bay's ceiling. Behind him, Raider troops burst through the shaft entrance, weapons drawn. Jack sealed the pod door and fired his engines. The pod detached upward, dodging blaster fire from below. Outsiders would call it a lucky escape, but Jack knew it was careful. Planning and timing. As they reached the starfighter, Jack released the tether and jetted back into the pilot's seat. Claire pressed close. Her face was pale but determined. "Are you okay?" Jack asked. "I am, thanks to you," she replied. "But we need to warn the fleet those raiders will strike back." Jack nodded. He pushed the throttle forward. The starfighter broke away from the crumbling raider ship. Behind them, the raider hull erupted in an orange glow as it self-destructed. Debris floated into space. Jack guided the starfighter through the asteroid field again, this time with Claire beside him. Every move was precise. Every calculation mattered. Finally, they cleared the last rock and jumped to hyperspace. The stars stretched and blurred. In the calm of hyperspace, Claire reached across the cockpit. She placed her hand over Jack's. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered. Jack looked at her and nodded. "And just doing my duty." Claire smiled, her eyes bright. Jack felt a warmth in his chest. For a moment, the galaxy felt vast and silent. But in that silence, Jack and Claire shared a promise. They would face whatever came next together. As the flagship came into view, Jack prepared for the next challenge. They had won this battle, but the war for the princess's future was only beginning. Jack, Ryan, and Princess Claire arrived at the fleet flagship in the planet's orbit. The massive ship gleamed under the twin suns. Crew members worked at various stations, their movements swift and precise. Jack guided his starfighter toward the docking bay. The automated clamps grabbed his ship and pulled it into place. He powered down the engines and released his helmet. Claire sat beside him in the pilot's seat, her face still pale from the rescue. She turned to Jack. "You flew brilliantly," she said softly. Jack shrugged. "Just did what needed to be done." They stepped onto the docking platform. Officers and guards lined the corridor, their expressions serious. At the end stood Admiral Turner, his uniform crisp. Behind him, Princess Claire's handmaidens and royal guards waited. Admiral Turner stepped forward and bowed. "Captain Ryan, Princess Claire, welcome back. Your safety is our priority." Claire nodded and curtsied slightly. Jack offered a polite nod. From there, they walked to the command center. Large holoscreens displayed star maps and fleet positions. Officers spoke in hushed tones. The rescue had shifted the political landscape. Rival houses watched closely, waiting for any sign of weakness in the royal family. Jack and Claire found a private room at the edge of the command center. Guards posted at the door. The room was simple, a table, 2 chairs, and a viewport looking out at the planet below. Jack sat and stared at the view. The planet's blue oceans and green continents spread out beneath them. Midway between cities, small dots showed fleet patrols. Claire stood by the viewport, her hands clasped. She spoke quietly. "Father invited us to the capital. He wants your report and the celebration, but I worry about the talks. Politics can be dangerous." Jack looked at her. "I know, but we can face it together." Claire smiled faintly. She walked to the table and sat. She motioned Jack to join her. He sat across from her. Claire took a deep breath. "I need to tell you what happens next. Father will hold a council at the royal palace. He will honor you, but he also expects you to take an oath to the crown." Jack's brow furrowed. "An oath? I'm a soldier, not a noble." Claire's eyes softened. "I know. But Father wants to recognize you in a formal way. Some say he might reward you with land or title. Others say he plans to bind you closer to the throne." Jack leaned back. "I never asked for rewards. I only wanted to bring you home." Claire reached across the table. "And you did. You saved me when I was at my lowest. I owe you my life." Jack took her hand. "We need to be careful. Power can change people." Claire nodded and withdrew her hand. The intercom beeped. A guard announced, "Admiral Turner requests your presence in 10 minutes in the briefing hall." Claire and Jack stood. They exchanged one last look before leaving the room. In the corridor, guards guided them to an elevator. The doors closed and they descended. The briefing hall was large, with banners hanging from the ceiling. The royal crest and fleet emblem intertwined. Nobles and officers filled the seats. Hushed conversations swirled around Jack and Claire as they entered. King Andrew sat on an elevated platform at the front. His silver hair was neatly combed. His robes were dark blue, trimmed with gold. Beside him, Queen Marie watched silently. The High Counselor sat in 2 rows behind the king. Jack and Claire approached the platform. The hall fell silent. King Andrew rose and spoke in a clear voice. "Today, we honor a brave soul who risked his life for my daughter and our realm," he said. "Captain Jack Ryan, you have shown exceptional courage." Jack bowed his head respectfully. "As a token of our gratitude," the king continued, "you will stand with us at court. Speak freely about your mission and the dangers you faced." Jack nodded and stepped to a small podium. He cleared his throat. "Your Majesty and honored guests," he began. "I was alone in the asteroid field with limited support. I did what any pilot sworn to protect would do. Princess Claire's safety was my priority. The raider ship was well defended, but we took them by surprise. The princess proved calm and brave. Together we escaped under fire. It was not my victory alone." Claire smiled and lightly bowed. The audience applauded. Some clapped softly, others with more enthusiasm. King Andrew raised his hand. "Thank you, Captain. Now I wish to celebrate with a feast. Afterward we will discuss the matter of your standing in our kingdom." Claire placed a hand on Jack's arm as they left the podium. "Will you join me for the feast?" she asked. Jack followed her down the steps. "Of course." They walked through a side door into a grand hall. Long tables were set with metal dishes and crystal glasses. Flowers from alien worlds decorated the center. Servants bustled about, filling goblets with wine and water. Jack and Claire took seats near the king and queen. The feast began with roasted vegetables and spiced meats. Jack sampled the food, noting unfamiliar flavors. Claire ate quietly, her eyes scanning the guests. Noble families from across the planet had sent representatives. Some bowed as they passed, offering congratulations to Claire. Others barely acknowledged Jack. One lord whispered to a lady and pointed at Jack's uniform. Jack leaned to Claire. "They whisper about me." Claire looked at him. "Some admire you, others are jealous." Jack nodded. "Jealousy can turn to danger." Claire reached for his hand under the table. Jack gave a small squeeze. He glanced at the king. Andrew enjoyed his meal but watched Jack closely. Halfway through the feast, trumpets sounded. 2 royal guards entered with a scroll. The head guard announced, "By order of His Majesty King Andrew, the court declares that Captain Jack Ryan shall be honored with the title of Companion of the Realm. Further, he is to appear before the High Council to take an oath of loyalty." Jack stiffened. Claire gasped quietly. King Andrew addressed Jack. "Captain Ryan, will you stand with the crown and take the oath?" Jack swallowed. He raised his head. I will not." A gasp spread through the hall. King Andrew's face grew stern. "You refuse?" he asked steadily. Jack felt his heart pound. He met the king's eyes. "Your Majesty, I am loyal to protect the princess and the people, but I serve the fleet, not the crown. If you need my oath to protect them, I will give it, but not for titles or politics." Silence hung in the air. Then King Andrew nodded slowly. "Very well. Your loyalty to the people is noted, but counselors mark his refusal." The high counselors took notes and whispered among themselves. Queen Marie looked concerned. Claire's eyes filled with worry. As the feast ended, Jack and Claire left the hall. Guards escorted them back to the ship. The night sky glowed with stars. Breezes from the planet's atmosphere cooled their faces. Claire spoke softly. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize Father would push so hard." Jack shook his head. "It's not your fault. You did what you must." Claire looked at him. You stood for what you believe. I admire that, Jack smiled. And I admire your courage, too. They arrived at the command center foyer. Guards stood at attention. Jack turned to Claire. I should report to the Admiral. Claire placed a hand on his arm. Let's rest first. We can face tomorrow together. Jack nodded. They walked into the waiting room. Chairs lined the walls. A soft light glowed overhead. Jack sat. Claire joined him. They shared a quiet moment. The rescue was over, but the real challenges lay ahead. Politics, oaths, and unwanted titles threatened to divide them. Yet, in that stillness, Jack and Claire found a bond stronger than duty or decree. Outside, the fleet flagship shone under the light of distant suns. Inside, two souls prepared to face a complicated future together. Claire stood in the sunlight of the palace courtyard, her pale blue gown flowing on the breeze. Courtiers and guards moved around her, voices low and urgent. Jack Ryan walked beside her, his uniform crisp. He felt the eyes of many on him. Whispers followed his steps. Despite his protests, he was a guest of honor in the royal palace. They reached the grand hall, its pillars tall and carved with ancient symbols. Flags of the kingdom hung from the walls. At the far end, a raised dais held a throne draped in gold. King Andrew sat there, regal and stern. Queen Marie stood at his side, her expression calm. High counselors lined the walls, their robes marking their stations. Jack bowed. Claire curtsied. The hall fell silent. A hush settled as the king rose. Captain Jack Ryan, the king began, his voice echoing off marble. You have saved my daughter and honored our realm. For this I am grateful. He paused and looked at his counselors. Some nodded, others kept silent. Jack straightened, meeting the king's gaze. Your Majesty, I only did my duty. Claire stepped forward. Father, please speak. King Andrew raised a hand. Trumpets sounded from the gallery. Two guards entered, one carrying a jeweled sword, the other a scroll sealed with wax. They approached the dais, kneeling before the king. The sword glinted in the light. The scroll shone with golden letters. With measured grace, the king unrolled the scroll. He read aloud, Let it be known that Captain Jack Ryan, by valor and courage, is hereby named Savior of the Crown. To unite our people and secure our future, he shall be joined in marriage to Princess Claire. This union shall strengthen alliances and ensure peace. Jack's heart thundered. Claire gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The hall erupted in murmurs. Some clapped joyously, others frowned. King Andrew held up a hand. The room quieted at once. Jack, do you accept this decree? Jack swallowed. He looked at Claire, whose eyes met his. Her gaze was steady but troubled. He bowed deeply. Your Majesty, I am honored, but I must speak truthfully. I respect Princess Claire and hold her in the highest regard. But marriage is a sacred bond, not a matter to decree by law. He paused, voice steady. I cannot accept unless my heart and hers join willingly. Whispers rose again. King Andrew's expression hardened. Queen Marie looked concerned. The counselors exchanged glances. Princess Claire stepped forward, her voice clear. Father, Jack speaks true. I value his friendship and bravery. But I cannot marry by command. I need time to think and to know my own heart. Her tone was respectful but firm. King Andrew's eyes narrowed. You would refuse your king's decree? He asked. Jack met the king's gaze. I serve to protect, not to bind. If your Majesty wishes a union of hearts, I will court the princess, but I will not wed by order. His words rang through the hall. Silence followed. The trumpets fell. Quiet. For a moment, time seemed to pause. Then Queen Marie spoke, her voice gentle. Andrew, the princess and her savior deserve agency. Perhaps judgment by deed and choice is better than decree. She looked at the king. The courtiers held their breath. King Andrew studied Jack and Claire. Finally, he exhaled and sat. His gaze was wary but thoughtful. Very well, he said. Court Undri and Jack, but remember that our realm watches your bond as a symbol of peace. You have 1 week to decide. After that, the decree stands. He gestured, and the guards retracted. The sword and scroll. Claire bowed to her father. Jack inclined his head. The crowd applauded, some with relief, others with disappointment. Trumpets played a soft fanfare. Claire and Jack left the dais, walking side by side through the grand hall. Corridors echoed with their footsteps. Outside, palace gardens awaited, their paths winding through alien flowers and bubbling fountains. 1 week, Claire whispered. Her gaze fell on a fountain where blue petals drifted like feathers. Placed a hand on her arm. We have time. We will learn about each other, and you will decide your heart's desire. His voice was calm. Claire nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Thank you, Jack, but I fear the council's eyes. They will test us. She looked uncertain. Jack offered a small smile. Let them test. We will prove our bond by action, not by words. He pointed to a distant path leading to a quiet garden. Claire agreed. Together they explored the palace grounds. They passed statues of past monarchs and crossed a glass bridge over a koi pond. The koi glowed with soft light in the deep water. Birds with silver feathers perched overhead. They found a secluded bench. Claire sat and picked at the hem of her gown. Jack remained standing, hands in pockets. Tell me more about your life, Claire said. I know of your service, but not of the man. Her tone was gentle. Jack sat beside her. I grew up on a farming colony. My parents taught me hard work and honesty. I joined the fleet to see the galaxy and protect the people. I never sought titles or land. Claire listened, then asked, Did you ever imagine yourself marrying a princess? Jack shook his head. Never. I thought my life would be simple. Defend borders, patrol routes, come home to my family. War taught me that life is precious and unpredictable. He looked at Claire. I value freedom and duty, not politics. His words were honest. Claire smiled softly. I value duty too, but I've lived my life in palace walls. I know little of the world outside. You saw life beyond the throne. Jack nodded. And you saw kindness in strangers when I first met you. You led peace talks who trusted you. You are brave, kind, and wise beyond your years. He paused. And I trust you, Claire. His eyes met hers. Claire's cheeks warmed. She looked away. Thank you, Jack. Your words mean much. But our union changes? More than hearts. It changes houses and alliances. She sighed. Jack touched her hand. I know it is more than us. But if hearts align, the future shines brighter. We face the council's tests together. His voice was firm. Claire nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. For a moment, the breeze carried the scent of alien roses. They sat quietly, sharing a fragile peace. Later, they returned to the palace. Whispers trailed behind them. Courtiers watched their every move. Rival houses sent envoys, some bearing gifts, exotic fabrics, rare wines, jeweled trinkets. Each gift carried a message, support, or warning. Jack declined most. He accepted a simple bouquet of white lilac from an older noblewoman. Claire thanked the lady. Afterward, they entered a private chamber. Guards barred the door. Claire closed the curtains. Lanterns glowed with soft light. Jack asked, Shall we practice etiquette? The council will observe every detail. His tone was light. Claire laughed softly. I teach you my manners, you teach me your life outside walls. She stood and poured 2 cups of tea. Jack accepted 1 cup. He sipped and grimaced. It is strong, Claire smiled. It will help you stay awake through court sessions. They both laughed. They spent the evening sharing stories. Jack spoke of battles and distant stars. Claire described palace festivals and childhood dreams of travel. Each found surprises in the other. Each found hopes for a life beyond duty. As the lanterns dimmed, Jack stood. I will walk you back to your room. He offered his arm. Claire took it. Together they walked silently through quiet corridors. Outside, moonlight shone through stained glass windows. Patterns of color danced on the floor. At her door, they paused. Claire looked up at Jack. Tonight was ... peaceful. Her voice was soft. Jack nodded. And tomorrow we face trials. He hesitated. Claire, you have my respect and genuine care. No matter outcome, I will honor your choice. His tone was sincere. Claire reached up and touched his cheek. and you have mine." Her hand trembled slightly. They shared a final glance before she entered her chamber. Jack watched her go, then turned back to the halls. Each step echoed Dot alone. Jack stood in the moonlit corridor, thinking of the week ahead. The councils. Tests would be many. Etiquette, loyalty, perhaps combat trials or political debates. By decree or by choice, the path was set. But for the first time, Jack felt hope and possibility beyond duty alone. Outside, the palace clock chimed midnight. Inside, two hearts prepared for the challenges of the royal decree, bound by respect, curiosity, and an uncertain promise of love. In the days after the royal decree, Jack Ryan spent his mornings training with the palace guard. He learned sword forms and court etiquette. Each afternoon he met Princess Claire for private lessons. They practiced formal bows, speaking with grace, and navigating palace customs. The bond they formed grew stronger with each shared moment. However, in the shadows of the palace, House Carter plotted against them. Lord Carter, a tall man with sharp eyes, watched Jack and Claire from behind. A marble column, he had long awaited a chance to claim favor with the king. When he heard of the princess's rescue, he saw an opportunity. Bring down Jack and win the king's ear. Carter met with his advisor, Lady Avens, in a hidden chamber beneath the palace. Torches flickered on stone walls as they discussed their plan. "Jack Ryan is a hero," Carter said, "but he is an outsider. We will show the king that his savior is unworthy." Lady Evans nodded. "We have forged a document showing Jack met with known smugglers before the rescue." She unfurled a paper sealed with Carter's signet. "This will prove he betrayed the fleet," she smiled. "Good," Carter replied. "We will present this at the next council session. The king will have no choice but to strip Jack of his honors." In the palace gardens, Jack and Claire walked along a marble path. Petals from alien cherry trees drifted around them. "Jack," Claire said softly, "do you ever doubt your place here?" "Sometimes," Jack admitted. "I worry that my refusal of the oath made me an enemy in this court, but I trust truth. If I am honest, I cannot fail." He squeezed her hand. Claire smiled, her eyes bright. "And I trust you." She leaned on his shoulder. Meanwhile, Carter's spies circulated rumors. Servants whispered that Jack sought to overthrow the king. Courtiers questioned Jack's loyalty. At dinner, a noblewoman asked Claire if she trusted a man who refused an oath. Claire answered politely, but her voice trembled. On the fourth day, the High Council convened in the Grand Hall. Sunbeams slanted through stained glass windows. You and Claire entered together, calm but alert. King Andrew sat on the dais, his face unreadable. Carter stood at the far end, dossier in hand. "Princess Claire, Captain Ryan," the king said, "we gather to assess your bond and funeral the union if it falters. The council will begin." He nodded to Counselor Benton. Counselor Benton, a stern man, rose. He addressed Jack. "Captain Ryan, House Carter presents evidence of your dealings with smugglers. How do you respond?" Jack's heart pounded. He took a steady breath. "Your Majesty, I have never met smugglers. I served the fleet honestly. This document is false." He gestured to Carter. "Lord Carter, why have you presented forgeries?" Carter smiled thinly. "Captain Ryan, the king must know the truth. If these papers are false, perhaps you can explain your strange actions before the rescue." He spread more papers on a table. Claire rose to speak. "Father, I stand by Jack. I was with him before he launched his mission. He did not leave me until he found me." Lady Evans, hidden among the counselors, stepped forward. "Princess, our records show Jack sent messages to unknown contacts. These men match the smugglers arrested in Sector 9. She pointed accusingly. Jack held back anger. He spoke calmly. "These messages were fleet signals. You misinterpret the codes. They are public codes for emergency support, not smugglers." Counselor Benton frowned. "We will investigate. Meanwhile, you must remain here under guard." He motioned palace guards to approach. Jack looked at Claire. Her face was pale. He pressed her hand. "We will clear this," he whispered. As guards led Jack away, Claire followed. They passed through corridors lined with torches. At the guard station, Jack was placed under watch. Claire stayed with him. That night, Claire knelt by Jack's cell. Moonlight fell through the barred window. "Jack, I believe you," she said. "I will prove your innocence." Jack smiled weakly. "Thank you. You give me strength." Claire touched the bars. "I will find the proof. I promise." She stood and left quietly. Under cover of darkness, Claire made her way to the archives. She moved quickly, avoiding guards. In the vast library, shelves held thousands of documents. She found the terminal that stored communication logs. Typing carefully, she entered access codes she knew from court etiquette lessons. Within minutes, she found the true logs. They showed messages between Jack's ship and the fleet's command center. Each code matched fleet channels. No message to smugglers existed. Claire downloaded the logs onto a data crystal. She slipped it into her gown pocket and left the archive. Back at the cell, Jack waited, eyes on the door. Claire approached, holding the crystal. "Jack, I got it." She inserted it into a reader Jack used. Together, they reviewed the logs. Jack pointed. "See this channel? It matches fleet code, and this one?" "That was when I asked for navigational data." He explained each entry. Claire nodded. "We have proof. Tomorrow at the council session, we show it." She hugged him through the bars. Jack closed his eyes. "I owe you everything." He touched her shoulder. The next morning, they returned to the grand hall. The king waited, Carter smug at his side. Court officials and counselors filled the benches. Claire and Jack stepped forward. Princess Claire spoke first. "Father, counselors, I have new evidence to present." She reached into her gown and held out the data crystal. Jack connected it to a holoprojector. Images and logs lit the room. Counselors leaned forward, reading. Court officials whispered. Claire explained each log. "These are fleet channels, not smuggler codes." Jack's messages were to command center, not criminals. She watched the faces in the hall. King Andrew studied the logs. Carter's smile faded. "Lord Carter," the king said quietly, "do you admit to forging these documents?" Carter's face turned red. "No, your majesty, I only presented what I believed was true." "Silence," King Andrew commanded. "This council will not tolerate deceit. Lord Carter is under arrest for treasonous forgery. Council, record this verdict." Palace guards moved to seize Carter. Counselor Benton spoke. "Lord Carter, you are stripped of title and exiled to the outer colonies." He banged the gavel. Carter was led away in chains. The hall erupted in murmurs and applause. Jack turned to Claire, gratitude in his eyes. Princess Claire smiled and bowed to the king. "Father, thank you for your wisdom." She turned to Jack. "And, thank you, Jack, for standing with me." Jack bowed. "I stand by you, princes, always." His voice was firm. King Andrew rose. "Your bond is proven by truth and courage. Court and crown salute your union. Continue your lessons and choose with your hearts." He smiled. The counselors nodded. The court doctors served tea. Court musicians played soft tunes. Jack and Claire left the hall side by side. Outside, the sun shone on the palace gardens. Jack and Claire walked through blooming flowers. Claire paused by a statue of a past queen. "We passed our first test," Claire said. Jack nodded. "And we learned to trust each other." He wrapped an arm around her. Claire rested her head on his shoulder. "I feel closer to you than ever." She looked at him, eyes bright. Jack kissed her forehead. "And I to you." He smiled. They returned to the palace wings. Each knew the week would bring more challenges, but for now they had proven their bond and cleared their path forward. At dusk, Jack watched as Claire practiced with a sword near the courtyard. Her strokes were graceful. He stood in the shadows, pride warming his chest. The wind carried laughter and the promise of hope. Inside the palace, behind locked doors, Housecarter plotted no more. Outside, two hearts moved closer with every step, ready to face the trials ahead together. On the morning of the trial, Jack Ryan stood in the practice yard, the sun warm on his shoulders. Rows of palace guards formed a circle around a sandy arena. At the center, a raised platform held ornate chairs for the king and his council. Princess. Claire watched from the royal box, her gaze steady. Jack took a deep breath and recalled his training. Agility, timing, and honor. The trumpet sounded and the gates opened. Jack stepped into the arena, his hands empty. The trial by combat would test his courage and skill without lethal force. Across from him stood Lady Savannah, House Carter's champion, a veteran swordswoman. She wore light armor and her sword glowed with a thin energy blade. Her eyes were sharp. King Andrew raised his hand. "Begin!" His voice rang out clearly. The guards held back as the two combatants approached each other. Jack raised his hands in a fighting stance he had learned from palace guards. Savannah circled him, sword ready. Dust swirled at their feet. Savannah struck first, a quick slash aimed at Jack's side. He rolled to the left and came up behind her guard. He reached for a stun baton at his belt. With a swift flick, he activated it. Blue sparks crackled at its tip. Savannah spun and parried his first strike. She was fast and skilled. The energy blade hummed. Jack backed away, then lunged with the baton, aiming for her shoulder. She blocked with her sword and kicked his leg, forcing him to stumble. Claire watched anxiously. Jack regained his footing. He remembered the lesson, use the environment. He scanned the arena. At one edge stood a short pillar. He moved toward it, baiting Savannah to follow. Savannah charged. Jack sidestepped and drew her sword with his baton, causing her to overshoot the pillar. He ducked under her arm and tapped her leg with the stun baton, sending a shock through her. She stumbled and dropped the sword. The crowd gasped. Savannah caught herself on the sand and reached for her sword, but Jack held his baton ready. The sand between them marked a boundary. If Savannah drew her sword again, the trial would consider it breach of rules. With careful steps, Jack tapped her back lightly, signaling he could have struck harder but chose restraint. Savannah nodded, breathing hard, and dropped her hand. She stepped back. King Andrew rose from his chair. "Stop!" The trumpet sounded again. Jack lowered his baton. Savannah raised her hand in surrender. Guards entered and escorted Savannah away. Jack stood alone in the center, chest heaving from exertion. Claire descended from the royal box and entered the arena, her gown trailing behind her. She placed a hand on Jack's arm. "You were brilliant," Claire whispered. Her voice rang clear in the quiet arena. Jack looked at her. "I fought to defend, not to harm. That was the rule." He offered a small bow. Claire smiled and turned to the king. "Your Majesty, a present proof of character." Jack showed mercy and skill. She held up the data crystal from the archive. Jack connected it to a hollow projector at the arena's edge. It displayed logs of Jack's true communications and his request for trial rules. The council watched intently. Counselor Benton spoke. "The trial and proof show Captain Ryan's honor and loyalty. The false claims are laid to rest." King Andrew studied Jack and Claire. Then he sat and smiled. "The trial is concluded. Captain Ryan, your honor is restored. Princess Claire, your trust is justified. Council, record this outcome." The counselors nodded and recorded the verdict. Guards saluted. The crowd cheered. Jack and Claire embraced briefly. Claire's eyes were bright with tears after the crowd dispersed. Jack and Claire walked through the palace courtyard. Jack carried his baton at his side. Claire held his hand. "That was the hardest test yet," Jack said. Claire nodded. "But you showed your heart." She squeezed his hand. They reached a quiet fountain. Water bubbled over smooth stones. Claire sat on its edge and Jack knelt beside her. "Thank you for fighting my fight," Claire said. Jack smiled gently. "I fight for you and for justice." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Claire leaned forward and kissed his cheek. "We pass each test together." Her voice was soft. Jack stood and offered his hand. "Let's continue." He helped her up. As the sun set, they walked back to the palace. Torches lit their path. Each step brought them closer to the final decision week. Inside, the halls were empty. Jack and Claire paused before a stained glass window depicting past rulers. Moonlight shone through, painting colors on the floor. "Only one part remains," Claire said, "the choice of the heart." Her gaze met Jack's. Jack nodded. "And I know mine." He took her hand. Together they walked toward their chambers, their bond stronger after trial by combat. The final dawn arrived. Jack Ryan stood in the palace courtyard, the marble tiles cool beneath his boots. The morning light painted the gardens gold. Around him, palace staff prepared the ceremonial pavilion. Colored banners snapped in the breeze. Nobles and military officers gathered. At the center, a simple platform awaited Jack and Princess Claire. Claire emerged from the palace, her gown pale green and flowing. She moved with quiet confidence. Jack watched her approach, his heart steady. This day would decide their future. King Andrew sat on the throne dais, flanked by Queen Marie and high counselors. A hush fell over the crowd as Jack and Claire took their places on the platform. The silence stretched until the king stood and spoke. "Today you face the choice bestowed by decree and won by deed," he said. His voice carried across the courtyard. "Captain Ryan, Princess Claire, speak your choice. Will you marry by duty and title, or by love and free will?" Claire looked at Jack. Her blue eyes shone with emotion. She stepped forward. "I choose love. I choose to marry Jack Ryan if and only if our hearts guide us." Her voice was clear. Jack's single quotes as chest tightened. He turned to the king. "Your Majesty, I choose love. I wish to marry Princess Claire because I honor her kindness, her strength, and her spirit. Not because of decree, but because I love her." His tone was firm and honest. A murmur of approval rose. The king studied the couple. After a moment, he nodded slowly. "So it shall be. By love and freedom you bind your hearts. May your union bring hope and strength to our realm." He raised his hand in blessing. Trumpets sounded. The crowd erupted in cheers. Jack and Claire stepped forward and clasped hands. Princess Claire smiled at Jack. "I have never felt so free." She squeezed his hand. Jack returned her smile. "And I have never known such joy." He bowed his head. The ceremony began. A royal officiant spoke simple words of union as Jack and Claire exchanged rings. The bands were crafted from metal mined on distant worlds, engraved with their names and the day's date. As they placed the rings, the crowd chanted their names. Banners waved, and the palace band played a soft melody. Confetti filled the air, and servants released caged doves, their white wings catching the light. After the ceremony, Jack and Claire walked down the aisle hand in hand. Well-wishers crowded the paths, offering gifts of flowers, fruits, and fine fabrics. Jack accepted each gift with a bow. Claire thanked each guest with a gentle nod. When they reached the palace entrance, the king joined them. He addressed the crowd. "Let the feast begin," he declared. Inside the grand hall, long tables groaned under platters of roasted meats, fresh breads, exotic fruits, and sweet pastries. Guests ate and laughed. Jack sat beside Claire at the head table. Their chairs faced the hall. The king and queen sat beside them. Throughout the feast, speeches praised their courage and love. Jack and Claire exchanged glances, smiling at each other's words. Later, Jack stood and tapped his glass. Silence fell. He spoke softly. "Princess Claire, you have shown me a world beyond duty. I have promised to stand by your side, to protect, to cherish, and to learn with you." He raised his glass. Claire stood. She touched Jack's hand. "Jack Ryan, you have saved me and shown me the strength of truth and love. I promise to stand with you, to support you, and to share every dawn with you." She lifted her glass. They clinked glasses. The hall cheered again. After the feast, dusk turned to night. Torches lit the palace gardens. Jack and Claire wandered among flowers that glowed with soft light. They paused by a fountain. "We begin a new chapter," Claire said, leaning against Jack. Jack wrapped an arm around her. "Together we face whatever comes." He kissed her forehead. Claire smiled and looked up at the stars. "Our future is ours to write." Her voice was filled with hope. Jack nodded. "And it will be a story of courage, love, and unity." He drew her close. Under the alien sky they stood together. Two hearts bound not by decree but by choice, ready to lead the realm with freedom and hope.